Thank you all for coming. This is the last talk of the day, clearly. So thank you all for joining us for the talk. And I know I'm the only person standing in the way between us and drinks. So I want to have some fun before then, and hopefully we learn something along the way. So my name is Gabe Abella. I'm an organizational coach at JP Chase. And I'm going to talk to you about tiger teams and how why you might need to be concerned about them as a Kanban coach. So I'm going to tell a story. It starts back in April 11th, 1970. 3 astronauts, Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Hayes, sitting atop of a Saturn V rocket, about to lift off, and certainly they do, are going to be in orbit around the Earth. And right around 2 hours and 41 minutes, they are going to then leave the Earth's gravity pull and go into what they call interlunar injection. And then right around 3 hours and 41 minutes, they're going to do a little maneuver because they have to kind of switch the aircraft around. So they'll take the CSM, which is the Command Service Module, flip it around and back it into the lunar module on their way to the moon. And of course, we're talking about the Apollo 13 mission. They will be tried to be the 3rd Apollo mission to the moon. And something interesting happens right around 55 hours into this flight to the moon. They hear a bang, and they get a little bit concerned. And then right around 55 hours and 55 minutes, you hear someone coming on the radio. It's actually Jack Swigert, and he says, "Houston, we have a problem." What most people don't know is that that actual sentence was preceded by something else. Anyone want to guess what word this is? Now, I'm not an astronaut, but if I was traveling pretty fast, 200,000 miles from the Earth, 35,000 miles on the way to the moon, what 4-letter word might you say? Back down to control. Yeah, right. This is what they said. This is the difference between an astronaut and a Kanban coach. They said, okay, we had a problem. And they had a big problem. They lost 2 of their fuel cells along the way, and they were actually, that's pretty much their lifeblood. That's what they need to survive in space. And then they had to rely on these guys. And so the person on the far right here, his name is Kranz. He is the flight director, the lead flight director for this mission. He's accompanied by some of his team. And they had the very important job of making sure now that they get home. Because this is no longer a lunar mission. This is a rescue mission. They're not going to the moon anymore. That's sort of a bummer, right? But now they just want to get home. And these folks back in Houston are in charge of figuring out how to get them home. And it's going to take a while to figure out really what happened, what went wrong, because someone couldn't go out and check, and they've got instrumentation and signals that they need to actually exchange information 200,000 miles away back in Houston to on the way to the moon. And it was a big challenge. And spoiler alert, you guys all know this if you've watched Apollo 13, they did make it home safe, but it was quite a big ordeal. It was probably one of the greatest sort of teamwork events at that time. And it really speaks to what they did was they were a tiger team. Now, Gene Kranz's team was initially called the white team. There's actually multiple teams that were going to take control of the mission from mission control, mission command through the entire duration. But then as soon as that bad thing happened, then Gene took it over and said, okay, our white team is now going to take care. We're going to lead this rescue mission. And funny thing is, the Tiger team actually was named by the actual press. So Gene's team was always called the white team, but we're going to call them Tiger team. And the Tiger team has some characteristics which now you might have heard or have seen in your business or have heard about. And essentially, Tiger teams are a group of experts that you bring together. You can commit them to doing something pretty challenging, interesting. They have a specific objective, usually well-resourced. It's a big deal, right? So whatever it is they're doing is really important, so to make sure they have all the resources they might need. And of course, they're temporary, right? So as soon as the goal is to get these astronauts, 3 astronauts home safely, And when they do, the mission will be over. So we're going to talk about, I'm going to talk about some of the engagements that we have been seeing at JP Chase related to Tiger teams, because this is a new demand for us. It's kind of exciting for us to see. We do a lot of work in organizational change, transformative change, usually in technology. We're seeing a lot of other demand in other parts of the business. And so we want to share those experiences with you. I want to introduce you to my teammates, Adam Hsu and Jason Newberg. So we are three coaches. We are, actually before I go on, I just want to get something out of the way. Because I work for JP Chase, I need to just declare that all the ideas I share will be my own, not those of JP Chase. And we work in a line of business called Chase Merchant Services within technology. We're aligned, so we have a span of influence around 1,000 technologists, but beyond that, maybe depending on how you count, 5,000 or 10,000 other types of folks aligned with business or operations. So depending on the type of work and where we're getting pulled, we can certainly generate demand, and this is sort of why we're talking about Tiger teams, because we get some interesting calls to now help folks in other parts of the bank. So let's talk about our capabilities. So as a coaching team, we bring a lot of things to the table to make sure we're prepared for what our clients and the folks that we're helping might need. So we're first and foremost lean Kanban trainers, and we also very excited to add enterprise services planning to our capabilities. Game changer as far as our capabilities are concerned. Best investment we've made so far. If you want to change any sort of team or line of business from an order taker to an actual business and make business decisions, this is the best sort of capability you can add. We also recently are doing a team diagnostic survey, which we'll go into a little bit later, based on research that late Dr. Hackman and Ruth Wagman have done, and we'll share that with you. And of course, we always like to include experiential learning into our classes and our coaching experiences. So we do use Oklo Flow Lab, and of course, we're a large technology organization, or at least where we reside. We also do some Scrum as well, so Scrum and Less and some other stuff. So we just make sure that we're prepared for whatever challenges might come. So when we talk about what we do in JP Chase as coaches, we can sort of kind of bifurcate our demand a little bit and talk about how we might apply our energy in the organization. And so we kind of look at where we might do leadership coaching versus team coaching. And so we're going to talk about this model called the 6 conditions model. It's based on decades of research on real teams, rigorously studied research, peer-reviewed, based on real teams, which says, look at these 6 things first before you do anything else, and that will at least increase the likelihood that the team will do great. That's certainly what we want to do. So let's take a look at the essentials of the 6 conditions. So there's 3 essentials, and the first is a real team. The characteristics of a real team is that they're bounded, so they know who they are. They know who they're not. They're interdependent, which means they have to work with each other. And 3, they are stable. So it helps a lot if teams are stable. A lot of people don't believe that. It's kind of crazy. They think that you can just flip resources in and out of a team, and they'll still do great. That's not going to happen. It's actually the first condition. We want to make sure that your teams are bounded, stable, and interdependent. The second thing we look at is compelling direction. Does the team actually understand why they're actually asked to do something? Is it important? So is it important? Is it challenging? Is it clear? Right? Those are really important things to get psychological engagement from anyone that you're trying to get to work as a team. And then the right people. So we also want to ensure that the people that are on the team have the right skills and have the right diversity. And diversity of thought will ensure that you're not getting some groupthink or some homogenous sort of ideas in there. So those are the 3 essentials. We say get those things done first before you do anything else if you're going to engage teams. The next 3 things you're going to do are look at the enablers. So the first enabler we look at is sound structure. And what we want to make sure is that the team is the right size if you're going to do interdependent work. That they're roughly, 2 pizza team is about right if you can do interdependent work. We also want to make sure that there's some core norms available, or core norms established, which means the boundaries of acceptable and unacceptable behavior are known by those on the team. So those will really help to make sure that again, you have sound structure. The second thing you want to look at as far as enablers go is your supportive context. So in this standpoint, is the environment providing the team or the group or whoever maybe the education it needs, the resources it needs, the information, anything it might need to actually be great, right? Or at least do what it's been asked to do. And then lastly, we look at team coaching. And team coaching is sort of interesting, not to be confused with team coach. Team coaching is a verb, team coach is a noun. What we say is team coaching needs to be available, and it doesn't matter who does it as long as it's available and it's good. Because there can be good coaching and there can be bad coaching. So the thing is about these conditions that it does matter the order in which you do them. So we talked about the 3 essentials and the 3 enablers. And if you take a look at what the research says about teams, if you do design your team correctly, if you have the right conditions, and we'll talk about the first 5, team coaching would be last. If your team is set up poorly, what the table on the left says, or the chart on the left says, is when you apply bad coaching to a poorly designed team, they get bad very, very fast. And they get very, very, very bad. And if you apply good coaching to a poorly designed team, nothing happens. They don't really get any better, right? They just don't get worse, but they certainly don't get their performance kind of shooting up there. Now, if you look at the chart on the right, what it says is that if you have a poorly designed team, or sorry, have a great designed team, and you apply good coaching to it, right? That good design sort of acts as an insulator. It protects them from the badness of the coaching, okay? And there can be bad coaching. And then, of course, if you have the 6 conditions or the 5 conditions in place and you add great coaching to it, then their performance is going to really skyrocket, right? You're going to get the bang for your buck. And us as coaches, so what we do with the 6 conditions, that are the 5 conditions plus coaching, which is we are coaches, is we use this to help us shape our demand. Is if there are teams that are out there that aren't necessarily supported by the other things, then we want to sort of give the leadership some influence leadership a little bit and say, hey, there's other things that you can do before we engage to make this team great, and also to get the benefit of actually great coaching, which we think we're great coaches. So if you are familiar with Nassim Taleb, he talks about concavity and convexity and which one is, if you forget which one is bad and which one is good, you can use this heuristic and put like little eyes on your charts. And of course, a sad face would be bad, so that's concavity, and a good face, a smiley face is good, so that's convexity. So the other thing we need to look at is when we're engaging teams, whether they're set up or not, or existing teams or even new teams, there's things that we would do to apply our effort correctly. And the first thing we want to do is we want to apply the 60-30 rule. The 60-30 rule states that the first thing you should do is spend 60% of your time on the design. So we're talking about the 6 conditions. Get these down first. That's going to help your team be great. Okay? The second thing you want to do is spend 30% of your effort on launch. And so that's where we come in. So we'll do some executive coaching to make sure that the team is set up correctly with the conditions. And then we come in, we'll add some Lean Kanban University content, some Flow Lab, and even do some workshops to launch the team. You see here, this is Mike Burrow's static. We'll get into later a little bit on how we use that in our engagement. And then lastly, the funny thing is, once you do your 60-30, you got 10% left, 10% of your effort. That's coaching. Now, we've done all the work. We've done a lot of work up until then, but ongoing coaching is really not a lot if you do the other stuff first. Okay? So we want to make sure we spend our time correctly, so this is how we engage with teams and with leaders. So what does team coaching look like? There's 3 factors that we look at for team coaching. The first is effort. If you're going to intervene with a team, you might want to look and see, hey, are there any free riders here? Or is everyone contributing equally? Or are some people contributing more than others? Okay, you might need to intervene to make that more balanced, to increase some happiness amongst the teams, even prevent burnout. Second thing you look at is knowledge and skill. Are the unique talents of the people on the team being used? Right? If they're not, you might want to add some intervention. Say, hey, you know how to do this, or you know how to do that skill, or whatever. That's how you might want to intervene. The last thing you want to do is look at the way the team works. And this is what's called strategy, or task performing strategy, how the team is going to approach its work. And this is, again, sorry. So this is where we're going to intervene as team coaches. Right? So we spend our time with executives to set the team up. We're going to intervene as team coaches on looking at effort, skill, and strategy. So now let's apply this lens to Gene Kranz, the lead flight director of Apollo 13 and the Tiger team. So let's take a look at the 6 conditions and what Gene did to set this team up correctly. So the first thing Gene did was this. And by the way, we can visualize the actual conditions of a team. This is we didn't actually ask Gene and the team to do this, so this is our interpretation of it. But if we're going to read the literature and the interviews and the YouTube videos, we see that what Gene did is he actually created this team very bounded, which is he took his white team offline. What that says is, don't bother my team. They're too busy trying to save the lives of these astronauts up there. Don't bother my team, right? Clearly bounded. Okay? If you're coaching a team or being on a team where you're splitting time with other activities, so we're all lean coaches here, right? That's really not productive. So he knew right away that he had to get his team to be focused. So what else did he do? From a compelling direction perspective, he said, this crew is coming home. Flight control will never lose an American in space. How clear and important and compelling does that sound if you're going to be on that team? You're jazzed up. And then lastly, he knew, in addition to the folks that were on the white team, other folks he wanted to pull in to make sure they're available for this very, very important mission. He said, I know Aldrich and Aaron. I know their capabilities. And by the way, Peters as well, a genius. I want him on my team. Okay? So they set the essentials in place. Then we're going to look at the enablers. What did Gene do to enable the team beyond the 3 essentials? He said, we need this team the right size. He said, we need to cut this team down to size. Look around. If anyone here doesn't belong here, tell them to leave. Which is kind of weird because sometimes when you're in your organization and you build a team, you have a tendency to include too many people. You want to include so many people because you don't want people to be left out, right? What we know is that if there's too many communication channels, you cannot actually be effective as a team. You cannot do interdependent work. From a supportive context perspective, this team had unlimited access to information. They were going to get whatever information they needed to be successful. And lastly, Gene was an expert coach. So again, what I mentioned before about team coaching, it's not a noun, it's a verb. Gene happened to have been the leader of this team, but also an expert coach. And he applied some of the knowledge and experience he had in his other missions and his training, and he did what's called thinking out loud. And it's a way to engage other folks in the work. Now, this is a Tiger team, right? So they're temporary, right? But they have a specific objective. They're well-resourced. They have what they need. But sometimes in our organization, we deal with other teams that have problems with the 6 conditions. And not to blame, kind of point judgment here, but sometimes we have leaders of teams or leaders of organizations that are not necessarily equipped to understand what it takes to actually help teams work well. And so these are two, the article you're seeing here from Harvard Business Review just came out 2 weeks ago. And they call it the most common type of incompetent leader. The most common type of incompetent leader is what they call passive leader or laissez-faire leader, someone who doesn't show up. Might be masked as trust. Oh, I trust the team. I'm going to let them do what I want. I'm not going to engage. That's laissez-faire leadership. It does not show up. It's absent leadership. Very, very damaging, the most common type. And of course, had to dig up the research as well. There's 3 other types of destructive leadership. But we want to focus on the laissez-faire type because that might be, again, because it's most common, and we can potentially intervene by providing leadership coaching to folks who might be absent. Okay. So we talked about visualizing the leadership or the conditions, the 6 conditions. We can do that. We do that with this instrument called the Team Diagnostic Survey. We use it as part of our coaching practice. And here's the amazing thing about this instrument. Here's how you get this data. You ask the team. You don't ask the leader, your leader's leader, whoever like that. You actually ask the people on the team, hey, do you have the information you need? Hey, do you have actual boundaries in place for your normative behavior? Do you have coaching available? Is it any good? So it's extremely useful. What you'll see, this is not a Tiger team. And this is, I would say, not uncommon. You might see some green in some other teams. You might see more green from Tiger teams because they usually have some sort of energy, momentum, some structure behind them, get everything they need to be successful. This is a regular occurrence for us to see that. And it's not a bad thing. It means there's opportunity. It's opportunity to provide both leadership coaching as well as team coaching. And again, we use it to shape our demand, which is before we engage in team-specific coaching, we want to give the leadership coaching to make sure that the team coaching is actually going to stick, because sometimes it doesn't. And so from a team coaching perspective, what did Gene Kranz do to intervene? The first thing he said was, I want nothing held back. I want everything you're going to give. Everything you're going to give. He wants to engage them psychologically. Okay? I want nothing held back. As far as engaging your knowledge and skill, he said, I will never second guess you. How would that make you feel if you're on the team? Right? And your leader says, I'm never going to second guess you. Whatever you give me is going to be what we need. Okay? It's really highly psychologically engaging. And the last thing he did was, based on the way that he facilitated their discussions, the way they work, he said that they were able to voice their opinions freely without hurting anyone's opinion or hurting anyone's feelings. Everyone became a part of the solution. This sounds like collaboration. Another thing it sounds like is a buzzword, or maybe just something that is sort of big in coaching community and Agile, is psychological safety. And we can measure it. That's what's great about, we love this tool, this instrument. You can ask the team, do you feel safe? And they'll tell you. This is a pretty healthy team, or at least they feel psychologically safe. There's really two conditions to psychological safety. One is, it's kind of a mouthful, equal distribution of conversational turn-taking. What that really says is that everyone who comes into the room has an opportunity to talk equally. And it takes kind of mindfulness to allow that to happen. And secondly, it requires high social sensitivity. And it might not be social sensitivity that you're born with. You can actually build that skill with some EQ training and some other things like that. But these are things that you can actually build and measure. And we do. So depending on where you are on your coaching journey, you've probably heard or read some other sort of guidance on how to build psychologically safe teams. And some things you might hear is you got to trust first. And I'm going to challenge that. I believe trust is not a strategy, because trust often looks like laissez-faire and passive leadership. It's sort of hidden in, oh, I'm letting the team be independent. I'm letting them work it out, right? Trust is not a strategy. What is trust? Trust is an outcome when you put the other conditions in place. Trust is an outcome of a behavior that you're going to see, right? You just can't tell people start trusting each other. Does not happen. You have to create the conditions for trust to emerge. Okay? So don't start with trust. It's a bad strategy. Okay? All right, so that's Gene Kranz. That's the three amigos. That's our coaching. That's how we approach our coaching capability. And now let's talk about some tiger teams. So anyone recognize this person? Jamie Dimon. Okay. Yeah, this is Jamie Dimon. This is the CEO and chairman of JP Morgan Chase. He's our boss. And he came out with a letter last week. Came with a letter last week to our shareholders. I think it's 47 pages long, maybe 35 pages long. And he's recounting an experience he had last year. We sat in front of a leadership team, and he said something like this. Bureaucracy is a disease, blank bureaucracy. Anyone want to guess what the four-letter word is that was missing in blank bureaucracy? It's Jamie Dimon. It's oh, it's working. Kill? Come on, we can vote here. What do you think? Oh, heal. I got some votes for heal. Okay. Okay, I hear you, Ramesh. Sorry, Ram. Okay, heal and kill are running neck and neck. Get a few more votes in here. I like cure. That means it makes sense in context, right? Cure. Okay. Ram, you got it right? Kill. So you read the 47 pages. Amazing. You must own a bunch of stock to really care that much to read that giant paper. Of course, and he wrote this and the section he wrote this in was strategy. This is part of the business strategy. He wanted to kill bureaucracy. It's a really strong word, right? So what happens when someone of that stature and power in an organization says they want to kill bureaucracy? Something happens. War rooms assemble! I now declare bureaucracy killed. Okay, no, you actually got to get some people around it. So what they did is they created war rooms to make a firm move in an agile way, to put a laser focus on hot button issues. And so these war rooms are gathered around the world. They're just like, sometimes it was 8 people, sometimes it was 11 people. They had the resources that they needed to tackle some really big problems. And they got together, almost like immediately after this, because this is, he's speaking at the leadership event, and all of his directs are there, and directs, and so forth. And they know that bureaucracy has to be killed. So they convene these teams, these war rooms, and they do a ton of planning, right? They got like mission statements. They've got goals. They've got work streams defined. They do all the things that you would need to do that Jamie would expect to see if you declare that you're going to kill bureaucracy, right? And then after about a week and a half or 2 weeks of planning, they get ready to kind of kick off the work. And they got some senior sponsors associated with them. And so at the end of the second week, the senior sponsor says, hey, how's the work going? Right? So, oh, we're just getting started. We're going to be going soon. Right? We're going to get started. Right? Another week passes. They have like another. This is a big deal, right? This is an executive initiative. End of the week comes again. Is how team? How's the work going? This is week 2, 3 now. Like, yeah, we're about to get started. We're ready. We're really ready to get going. And then another week passes. Now you're in a week 3/4. And they meet with their stakeholder again, their sponsor, and the sponsor says, hey, how's it going? And they go, we're about to get started. It's kind of a weird behavior, right? It's like you just getting heard from your CEO, you need to get going. And they're like, yeah, we got the war room, we got the information we need. We don't know how to get started, right? And then so their sponsor was like, hey, you need Kanban. And they're like, okay, great. We'll get Kanban, right? And imagine right after that, they hung up the phone. They're like, is Kanban a person or a thing? That's probably what they said. And then what happened was through the grapevine, we're one of the few Kanban practitioners in the firm. We're just like probably any other technology organization. Scrum is the sanctioned agile method, right? Sometimes you can't even say another method. That's okay with us. We still got plenty of work. But yeah, it took a while for people to find us because like the referrals we got were I know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy who does Kanban. So probably in a few days we got on a call and hear their story and like, hey, there's a thing. Jamie Dimon said he needs to kill bureaucracy. Can you guys come down or up to New York City and help us in the war room? We're like, sure, let's come. And so we already committed, so fine. We can't tell Jamie Dimon we're not going to kill bureaucracy, so we show up in New York City. But before then, we want to take an assessment of like, hey, what's going on with this team, right? We want to apply our filters to this. And so what we figured out was, from an essentials perspective, they had the people, they had the direction, and they had sort of the boundedness. So like there's dedicated teams there to do the work. But if you look at the enablers, you look at the things that might be missing from a supportive context. So one, education. They don't know Kanban. They might need it. We can provide it. That's why it's going to be a little bit yellow. They might not have sound structure. And what we mean by that is there might be some things missing, which is in sound structure, the design of the work. If they actually knew how to design their work, they might not have this problem. They might have started 3 weeks ago. They need that knowledge. And team coaching. They probably had tons of different types of team coaching, just none which would enable them to do some of the work they needed to do. Now let's look at our team coaching. Now, how might we intervene from a team coaching perspective? They got tons of effort. They're psychologically engaged. Jamie Dimon said, kill bureaucracy. They've got all the knowledge and skill. They've been handpicked to be on this war room in New York City. They just don't know how to get started. That's a definition of red. That's a definition of you have no strategy. Okay? That's how we can help. So we now know that Jamie Dimon kind of along the way wants us to come up to New York City and teach some Kanban to some leadership teams and kind of get this bureaucracy killed. That's how we felt. We're going to Kanbanize the world. Guns blazing. We're going to have so many static workshops. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be, we're going to push Scrum out and whatever. And okay, it's not going to happen. After we calm down a little bit, we're like, what are we going to do? Okay, it was a Friday. We're going to go up on Monday. What are we going to do? Like, we sort of talk a big game. Like, yeah, we can help you. We know Kanban. We know it's a thing, not a person. We got to go back to what they actually asked for. We need help getting started. And so we asked ourselves, what type of team is this? Now, certainly Kanban can help lots of different types of teams. You got to know which type of team you're working with. This team is a leadership team, right? There's 11 of them, but they probably have influence or authority over literally hundreds of people, maybe thousands, to take care of this bureaucratic process. Okay? What does a leadership team do? Right? There's certain types of leadership teams. This comes from Ruth Wagaman, who's an expert on leadership teams. First type is informational, which is you just ask a bunch of people, what do you think? And they tell you. Second one is consultative, is that you ask them what they think, and then you might actually use it to make another decision. Third type is decision making, which is you ask a group of people what they think, and then you actually act on it. And the last thing is coordinating, which means you ask people to do something based on maybe the decision they just made. This is a leadership team, which is different from a work team. Big difference. You need to know what type of team you're engaging with. The second thing we want to ask is, what type of service does this team provide? Very important thing to know if you're going to apply Kanban. Anyone remember or know of this company here, BASF? Anyone familiar with it? This is their current tagline, "We create chemistry." They just transitioned to this, I think, I don't know how recently, but they used to have this tagline. It said, "The chemical company." Yeesh, I don't know. Chemicals don't necessarily have a good rap. It's probably why they came off it. Anyone remember the ad campaign before that one? From 1980s.
Make a lot of things you buy better.
Yeah. We don't make, it's the interesting thing, they start their actual ad campaigns, they tell you all the things they don't make. We don't make cars, we don't make dresses, we don't make anything. Well, they do, right? They don't make the things you buy, they just make the things you buy better. It's a cool kind of thing. And you need to look some of these commercials up. They kind of stick with you for a while. You knew it. Very memorable campaign. They don't really make the things. They just kind of add some added value, right? Some special stuff, right? So what does this team do, which I've named Ghostbusters? What is it that this team does? Well, I can tell you what they don't do. They don't service a customer. They don't actually, the 11 people in the room, they don't actually go and talk to the customer, right? What they do is they make the customer service better. Okay? So what type of service does this team provide? They are a service design service. They just got meta on service. Okay? This is a very unique type of service, right? It's a very unique thing. That helps us understand how to get prepared. After talking to them, we then started thinking, hey, what sort of information we have available to us? And so we were lucky enough to work with Theodora while she was developing the Kanban maturity model last year. And we said, hey, we read it. What could we learn? What could we use in the KMM to help us decide how to intervene? First thing we know is that it took them 3 weeks to realize they weren't going to get started. This is what's described within the KMM. There was no collaborative working, or if there is, there's no recognition of collaboration. Really what their situation was, there was no working. Weird behavior for a tiger team. Second thing is, if you want to get somewhere, potentially everyone's at level 0, right? So you want to get over to level 1. You want to try and get some sort of collaboration going. And by the way, you want to have some sort of sense in the way they're going to do their work. So we're going to take baby steps. Now, you saw the guys riding on the horses, shooting the guns in the air. You're thinking, upstream, downstream, type of service delivery workflow, tons of Kanban boards everywhere across the world. That wasn't going to happen in this situation, right? This model exists to help you make some good decisions. So that's what we did. We went up to New York City and kind of tested the model. So you can see here, here's where we were at. We actually printed the Kanban maturity model up on the, and hung it up on the windows. And we were kind of debating, hey, I wonder if this team, how would they feel about being oblivious? How do they feel? And it turns out they came in, they looked at it, they said, hey, what's this? It was like, oh, well, this is the model that kind of describes how teams or organizations might behave. We kind of categorize them. And look at oblivious. And they go, that's about right. That's about right. They loved it. That makes sense, right? They know exactly where they are. So we had the fortunate of having some data available. So on the way there over the weekend, we took some of their data and just sort of kind of help us to make sense of what was going on. We'll credit Troy McGinnis. Awesome tools available, spreadsheets available to really help you make sense of your data. And we played a game, which is what do you see? Tell me what you see. It's a Rorschach test. And we let sort of them decide. They've never seen a human flow diagram before that we knew, and by evidence of how they reacted, they didn't either. I can't tell you. Let's pretend it is for now. It's representative of their data. What would this tell you, Kanban coaches? What would this tell you? Yeah? What trend are you seeing? Increasing trend. Yeah. Is this busting any bureaucracy? Is this killing any bureaucracy? Is there any bureaucracy being killed anytime soon? Yeah, okay. So that was sort of a realization they had to make. This is their data, lead time histogram. I'm just going to throw it out there. You might see some buttons, some numbers down below here. The question I'll ask the room is, what would you tell your customer? If you gave me an item today, if I gave you an item and this is your capability, what would you tell your customer? Any guesses, any numbers you guys want to throw out? Days. Under 2 years? That's a good one. That's a good one. These are days. These are days, Trent. Any number? Any? I don't want to fathom a guess. 2 months, 60 days. Okay. Based on this data here, what's that? 300 days. I think. Okay, that's pretty good. So based on this data, this capability, this group was telling people that they can expect 155 days. That's their average. So what do we say about averages? Never cross a river that is on average 4 feet deep. This is this is from Nassim Taleb, because you might get some little shallow area, then you might go to 20 feet deep, and then you might drown, and you might come back up again. Averages are a bad way to inform your customer. So what do we say? The heuristic we like is, how often do you like to lie to people? 1 out of 7 is a right kind of good start. And we said, okay, if you want to lie to someone 1 out of 7 times, 264 days is about a number you want to give them. Okay. The big difference between 155 days and 264 days. This is information we're sharing with them. This is a different way of thinking about your work. Absolutely. And you know that. But we need to let them experience that. So how do we do that? We inform intuition with simulation, Okolo Flow Lab. Huge fans of this simulation, highly engaging. It does the work for you. Adam just gave a talk earlier this morning about influencing the intuitive brain, right? Influence the elephant in the room, or the elephant. And this is the best way to do that, okay? Lectures are never going to get it. Then, let's go back to a principle. Start with what you do now. So here's the interesting thing, though, right? We said that this is a service design service. But we still need to start with what we do now. Because they didn't know what the service looked like. They'd spent 3 weeks kind of guessing and not knowing. So we got everyone up on the board. And they started modeling their service as sort of a modified static, what we're talking about now, because we analyze their demand and capability. And this is really important for starting some degree of collaboration, which is wonder what those other 11 people or 10 people on the team are actually doing. And there are hundreds of people that might be doing the work. And then what they did is we said, OK, well, if you're going to improve this service, what are the opportunities? So you see some smaller stickies on there. They kind of chose some opportunities. What could we do to improve some of these steps, right? So that was start what you do now with a little bit of sort of imagining the future, right? We don't want to pretend that we can design the future, but sort of give some ideas on how to start our work. Then we use that to inform our strategy, and we create what I would call it an emergent workflow, right? If you look in the Kanban maturity model, it actually says maturity level 1, emergent workflow, highly useful. This is a great model, or sorry, great pattern. We're using it a lot. Why? Because a lot of the work you do is non-homogeneous, it's heterogeneous. You will never find a flow of work for the type of work they're doing. You'll never find specific steps, right? You can do what we call pin the tail on the Kanban board, right? Which is you can use the 1 to 99% to give an idea of where an item is, and here's how you prove it. You put something up there, and someone asks you, why is it there? And they explain. It's here because of this. And it's a lot better than some arbitrary kind of column that you've made with some done criteria that doesn't matter and some ready criteria that doesn't matter. Okay, this is a great pattern. So that kind of wraps up the war room, but guess what? We got another Tiger team. We got more demand. It's kind of fun. Right? Kind of use what we learned. We engaged some analyzed capability, we modeled the workflow, did some experiential learning, we mapped the journey, and then this was sort of fun for us. In addition to the Emergent workflow board, we introduced upstream Kanban to help you understand your options, right? Make better decisions about the work, even mitigate starvation. Right? All kind of cool things. Fun for us to do. So what did Jamie Dimon say? Kranz, Gene Kranz and some of the astronauts as well as some of the team, right? After they landed, after the astronauts came home safely, they got the Congressional Medal of Honor from the president, President Nixon. We didn't get that. That's okay. We just got this. And I had to read it in the actual report, but that's fine. He said, the teams have been so successful in driving bureaucracy out of the decision-making process, we plan to do more war rooms. Haven't gotten any calls yet, but we certainly wouldn't entertain it. Okay. This is our kind of our intrinsic motivation, kind of knowing that people are going to be calling us more to do some of this exciting work with some Tiger teams that are set up with the resources they need and the people they have to be successful. So your Tiger teams have a blind spot. We're going to fix them with Kanban. So what do we say? Get the eye of the Tiger. Visualize with Kanban. We did a lot of visualization, right? We visualized the conditions of the team using the six conditions, right? We did some intuitive learning. We did a lot of static. We did a lot of modeling, right? These are all things that were preventing this team from getting off the ground, from getting out of the blocks. So if you start seeing this type of demand, you can start applying some of these patterns as well. Hopefully this will inform you in your practice as well. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions. And by the way, you can see kind of the eye of the Tiger is a little Kanban symbol there.